My name is Halvor, and I am a senior professional working out of the Oslo office. And I am a certified consultant in both Onboarding 1.0 and also now Onboarding 2.0. And I'm very excited to give you a little demo and overview of the new onboarding. You're all muted, but feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I will address them at the end of the session. So let's just get to it. Let's see. So I just wanted to start off quickly about what onboarding is. And you've all heard of onboarding and working closely with onboarding, and you know that you want to get an employee quickly up to speed in the business when they're starting. In our processes, we differentiate between cultural onboarding and administrative onboarding. And cultural onboarding is getting the new hire quickly integrated in the company and its culture, while the administrative onboarding is about getting the new hire the right tools and information to become a productive member of the team. Also, administrative onboarding is about gathering the right information and sending you to the parts of your organization that needs to make some decisions or do some processes before the new employee starts as well. So SAP SuccessFactors Onboarding 2.0 is a tool that aims to help you with both types of onboarding. I'm sorry about some of the pop-ups that appear here. So the onboarding process, if I can here, looks like this. And for those of you who are familiar with the onboarding 1.0, you will see that the process itself is quite similar, but the execution of some of these steps will be very different in the new module. It will look quite different and it will feel much more coherent. So you typically start an onboarding process in the recruitment module. So you have the start onboarding process here. And again, for those who are familiar with onboarding 1.0, once you start the onboarding process, you get into what is called the post-hire verification step. In onboarding 2.0, we just call it correct new data. And that is by default only triggered in cases where there are some discrepancies or something about the data when you start that doesn't seem right. And so the system is asking a manager or a recruiter to verify that information. And then you have, so the process kind of diverges. You have the administrative onboarding that keeps going here with some paperwork. And then you have some additional tasks that you can assign to people in the organization. So I'm just going to go ahead and explain this one first. So after the data has been corrected, you have some personal paperwork where the employee fills out information. And now in the new onboarding 2.0, this is happening directly in Employee Central, and you will see some visuals later and screenshots. You can see what that looks like. And then after you're done entering the information as asked by Employee Central, you have an opportunity to ask for even additional information or paperwork that you do not necessarily save in your system for the long run, but data, you can ask for data that you want to use during the onboarding process. For instance, a parking pass, you might want to know their license plate number, or if you're going to order a uniform, you would like to know their clothing sizes. And then eventually, some documents are generated, and if required, the employee may sign those documents. At the end, after this is done, you will go through the manage pending hires functionality again, and an admin person will do the final hiring in Employee Central. And on day one, the employee will be converted from an external user into an internal employee in your system. You may have some additional post-hire tasks, then you can go ahead and do those, but if you don't have them, then the onboarding process is completed. At the same time, throughout this process, you have these additional tasks. And some of these tasks might be familiar to you. I've been working with onboarding before. These are tasks such as schedule meetings, preparing for day one, setting some goals, assigning a buddy. and important, and I will come back to that later, but now you can assign these tasks pretty much to anyone in your organization. You're not limited to the hiring manager as it used to be before. Let's see, next slide here. Okay, so some strengths from Onboarding 2.0 put down in the slide here. Perhaps the first thing you'll notice first is that it's a brand new user interface, and that offers a more cohesive onboarding experience to the employee. In Onboarding 1.0, it's pretty clear that it's a separate system, and then you send the employee into a system that looks nothing like the final SuccessFactors system. But with Onboarding 2.0, it will look more cohesive throughout the experience, which is a great benefit. And then also, you can now create different tasks and activities based on business criteria. So I have a scenario to illustrate this. So for instance, you would like to predefine a different set of activities for blue-collar workers than for white-collar workers. For example, it might not make much sense that a blue-collar worker prepares for day one the same way as a white-collar worker. So in Onboarding 1.0, you didn't really have a functionality to differentiate like that. You could only do that based on location, department, or division. But in Onboarding 2.0, you can use business rules from the SuccessFactors suite to filter activities any way you like with any criteria you want. So you can really filter and customize the process to fit the different parts of your organization in a whole new way. Next one is grant. Now you can grant new employees external access into the SuccessFactors by default. That means that when, instead of them going into an onboarding module to perform the paperwork, you're actually allowing them access to the SuccessFactors suite. Of course, a very restricted view, so they can't view any of your sensitive data or content, but still they get introduced to the SuccessFactors system before they even start, and you really have their attention at that point in time. So it's a great way of getting them to use the system. And that also allows you to easily make other modules or integrations part of the onboarding experience, such as learning management systems and JAM. Another important part of this is that since you're granting them access pre-day one, the employee ID can also be generated at this time. So if you have other systems or integrations that rely on the employee ID to do different processes, now you can integrate them and you can start that process before day one. Also, I had a scenario here that I wanted to go through with you. Let's see. For example, an onboard is going through a data collection step. When entering details such as personal ID, you would like for the system to validate whether or not the ID is entered in the right format. So also because Onboarding 1.0 used to be a different system, it also you had to put up your own validation that was very limited functionality. It didn't work well with things like country variations. But now in Onboarding 2.0, when the employee is going directly into the system or SuccessFactors and utilizing the EC setup, you can also use all the validation rules that you've set up in Employee Central in the data collection. So address validations, national ID validations, you name it, you can use it all. You can now also create as many or few data collection steps as you wish. In Onboarding 1.0, you could only really have 3 steps. Now you can keep adding and going if you want that. So that's pretty neat. And also a big improvement is that Onboarding 2.0 is using role-based permissions to its full extent. That was also a big limitation to the previous onboarding, and now you don't have to. So before you had to maintain roles permissions in several places at once, now you can only deal with role-based permissions and that's it. And also, you can now involve as many responsible parties as you wish in the onboarding activities. As an example, if you have an employee starting and you would like to assign onboarding activities to different people in the organization. For example, you would like the manager to write a welcome message and set goals, and you want to assign a checklist with necessary activities to someone in HR, and you want team members to schedule a welcome lunch. So in Onboarding 1.0, all of those activities were assigned to the hiring manager. In 2.0, you can assign activities to defined responsible groups. So you set up you can set up a number of different groups. They can be dynamic or static, and then you can assign activities to those groups as you see fit for your organization. So now we're going to have a look at the onboarding system. So there's not really any demo system for partners to demonstrate live, but we have a whole deck of slides here with screenshots from the system. So I'm going to go through them, and you will get a feel of what it looks like and what you can expect. So first off, we're logging in as a recruiter in the recruitment module. For those of you who don't have recruitment, strongly recommend you look into it. It's a very nice and neat module, very integrated with SuccessFactors, of course. And now you can see we have a candidate here, Tim Bauer, who's in the offer section of the recruitment pipeline. And we can see we have a start date and we're ready to hire this person. So we'll go over to take action and initiate onboarding. And now we'll get a pop-up saying that the onboarding process for Tim Bauer has been initiated. And at this point in time, things will happen to people involved. For instance, the manager will now get some paperwork that they have to do. So we're going to have a look at that. So the next part now is to look at the manager's view. So logged in as Wallace Richard, he is the manager. We can now see the task here that says onboarding data review. And we can see we have one task here that's due in 5 days. If I click on that tile, now I will get an overview of the new team members. So we only have one, Tim Bauer, but if we had more onboardees, they would appear in this list now. And then, so my task right here, or Wallace's task, is to correct some onboarding data. So we can just click on start. And here you can see this has been greatly improved. Now it feels like you're entering data directly into Employee Central. And for those of you who are familiar with EC, you will recognize this instantly. And then we can move in and fill out some information. You will see that some of the information might not make sense for the manager to fill in, but they have the same view as the new onboardee. So for instance, marital status is typically something that the onboardee would fill out themselves. So you can leave that blank. And then we can go through the data. And the position information is coming from recruitment, and that also populates all of your organizational information. So everything should be fine from the recruitment module. There's some job information and compensation information, how we would like to pay them, and a monthly amount. And then when you're done, you just click submit, and now the paperwork has been updated. And it will tell you that the onboardee will be notified about the changes you have made. And so we also have some tasks. These are the ones that were previously called the hiring manager activities. Now they're just called tasks. So still logged in as Wallace Richard. We can see here now that instead of the paperwork task, we now have prepare for new team members. So if I click on this tile, I will get up a pop-up here, and we can see it's Tim Bauer, he's a new team member, and we have some tasks that we want to do here. I want to add also that the new onboarding module supports mass onboarding. So if you had several activities, the same activities for several people, you could decide to pick up and do them all at once. So everyone would get sort of the same meeting, or that you would do it all at the same time. So I'm going to start with schedule meetings. And here we can see we have some templates for the meetings. And then you can add from those templates, or you could add your own meeting. So say that we add first day review and intro to business and team. You can set a date and time, and of course a location here where you can put in sort of your own little text. And then if you're not satisfied, you can go back and change it by clicking the pencil icon, and it's still looking really nice. And then when you're good and ready, you just click submit. And then we have some goal setting. And now you can see we have the 30, 60, 90-day goals. After you enter the goals here, they will actually go into the performance and goals module, if you have that one. And in onboarding 1.0, you were limited to only this goal plan, 30, 60, 90-day goals. But in the 2.0, you can actually add goals to any goal plan. And that also brings up opportunities to, for instance, if you have a cross-boarding or an internal hire, it doesn't really make sense to have the 30 or 60 or 90-day goals. But since you can now use any goal plan, you could really set up goals for processes such as those as well. So you can really play around with this and tweak and get a nice experience for the new hire or internal hire. And then lastly, we have a sign-in buddy. And then you can write a message about why you recommend this person to be a buddy. And you can also add a personal note to the person you are assigning. I also wanted to just emphasize that this prepare for new team members, now we're logged in as a manager, but that would also be the same tile, for instance, if you have for anyone else who's involved in the onboarding process now. It doesn't really only have to be the hiring manager. So let's look at the onboarding experience for the new hire. So the first thing that happens is that the new hire will get a login email to the SuccessFactors suite. And then they will click the link to set their password, which brings us to the familiar password, SuccessFactors password page. And then they can enter, and then they will have access. If for some reason they didn't receive that email, or they have put in a faulty email or something happened so they didn't receive it, someone, an admin person, could always go into the new email services in Employee Central and SuccessFactors that comes with onboarding. And they could look at the emails that were sent. For instance, I can see here that this is the welcome to Performance Manager to Tim Bauer. And I can open that email and find that link and perhaps resend it or find another way of distributing the SuccessFactors link to the employee. So it's not lost if the email is not received. See? So when now we're logged in as a new employee, Tim Bauer, this is before day one, and they have access to the system. And you can see it's very limited. They will have some onboarding tiles. For instance, the meetings that we've scheduled, prepare for day one list, also information about where to go, and useful contacts if you've set that up as well. And here you can see you have some activities that the new hire needs to complete before they start. So the first one we're going to do is provide data for onboarding. So when I click on that one, you will see this view that looks very familiar. We'll get a little pop-up that says, please provide us with your personal information so that we can prepare your paperwork. Once this step is complete, you will receive an email to sign your documents. And so going through this view, you can see that this looks the same. They get to review it one more time, the employee. Also, they get to enter some more personal information, such as gender, marital status, nationality, maybe some healthcare information if you need that, and emergency contacts, dependents, very useful. A lot of countries have tax returns, tax deductions for dependents, so useful to enter. And then some job information about the start dates. I also want to add that the information visible to the new employee here is controlled by role-based permissions. So for instance, I noticed, or you may have noticed, that you could edit this one. If you don't want the new hire to edit their own start date, of course, you'll just make it gray and uneditable. And you can also completely hide it if you wish. So this is all controlled by role-based permissions, and it's easy to change yourself too. So this is something that's now very nice to set up. And then when the employee is done, you can click submit. And then you'll now have a tile. It's changed a little bit. And now it says complete additional onboarding tasks. And if I click on that one, this is the one that brings us to at the beginning when we talked about processes. I mentioned that you might ask for some additional information that you don't necessarily store in Employee Central, but that you use in the onboarding process for ordering equipment or stuff like that. So for instance, the parking pass is one that you would have here, or the uniform. You could ask that information. And then that information is entered and it's mapped to documents or otherwise sent off and distributed to the correct parties. And so, yeah, and you could add as many of these as you wish. After that's been completed, the onboardee receives an email if they have documents to sign. So how this email looks and what the how the functionality presents itself depends a little bit about depends on if you have DocuSign or if you're going to use the integrated signature feature. You have two options here. But if you have DocuSign, you will be taken to a DocuSign account. And it's really neat. And if I go and click review documents, I can now see the documents with the data mapped to it, and then also sign here. DocuSign also has opportunities to, or options to sign with bank ID as well in Norway. And so finally, after the new hire has done that, you can go to finish the process, and that is an HR admin step. You go to the Manage Pending Hires, logged in as an admin. This tool is probably familiar to those who have the Onboarding 1.0. Now in the list, it says Onboarding Simplified or Simplified. So most of this data, if I click on and I select one of my hires now, most of the required data should already be filled in. So there's very little information here now that's lacking. The only scenario is if you expect the HR admin person to know something that neither the recruiter or employee or manager knows beforehand that you want to fill in. Otherwise, you can go through this, verify that the information looks correct. And when you're done, the hire date will be whatever the hire date is, and the process is completed. And then what happens is that when you reach that day one, the employee record will be converted from an external user to an internal user, and they will have full access to the SuccessFactors suite. So that was my presentation. I hope it gave you a little better look and a better understanding of what Onboarding 2.0 is and what you can expect. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and now we'll see if there are any questions. I cannot see that there are any questions in the chat or in the question section. So yes, I'd just like to thank you again and have a great day. And I hope to hear from you in regards to implementing Onboarding 2.0 in your organization.